Hi, I'm Mike with House on the Mend, and in episode 2 of our basement bedroom build, where we've been framing and building out Aspen's bedroom, we are going to be doing insulation and drywall. So let's get started.
House on the Mend.
So when we last left off, I was just starting to wire all the blue boxes that I had installed. And I have since completed all of that, including also wiring all the lights that we're going to be putting in. We had one light in this whole area, and now we're going to have 4 in the living room area and then 2 in this area here, which is going to be the actual sleeping quarters of Aspen's room. So what's the next step after I cleaned up all the mess from drilling holes and running the wiring and everything? Now it's time to start putting in the insulation in between these 2x4 studs. And I'm going to be using rock wool. This is actually not the brand rock wool, so this is called mineral wool. But it's basically basalt rock, which is lava rock that is spun up like cotton candy. It's got very good thermal properties. It's also a really good soundproofing material. It has a better fire rating than fiberglass, and it is much more mold resistant than fiberglass. I never knew that how bad fiberglass was, but it can mold quite readily, especially if it has the paper backing. So right before I get my glasses and my gloves and my respirator on, I might as well pop this guy open and get it expanding. Now, mineral wool is a lot better to work with in my experience than fiberglass. A little less itchy. However, I still like to wear gloves, a long sleeve shirt, and a respirator because I have worked with it, and if I don't do those things, I do feel uncomfortable at the end of the day. Now, also before I get my mask on, I just want to go over, these pieces are very rigid. So you just friction fit them in between the studs, as long as your studs are the proper distance away from each other, which some of ours aren't going to be, but most will. And they'll just hold itself up. There's no paper backing or stapling. It's great. Move this out of the way of the microphone. So 8 pieces per bag, covers 1, 2, 3, 4 gaps between studs. So you can see it's going to take a lot to do this whole room. Quickly, whenever I'm installing rock wool insulation, when I'm cutting around outlet boxes, or in this case 2x4s for our floating shelves, I like to use a standard household bread knife. These serrations on a bread knife do not tear the insulation, they cut right through it perfectly. Every sheet is that much of a pain. All right, on to drywall. So this distance from here to here is not a full sheet. It is just a little bit less. So I marked off that measurement. Now a T-square is so nice to have when doing drywall for 2 reasons. One, you can use it to draw pencil lines where your studs are to allow you to put in screws with more accuracy. But even better than that is when you need to make a cut, you can just put your foot down on one side, hold strong up here, and run your razor knife. Like that, just one time. To score it, put your knee back here and just boom. right. This piece will go, I'll have to cut it down just a little bit more, but it's gonna go right there in the closet. All right, we have an outlet. How do we wanna deal with that? I have used this before in some of the other videos, but if this is the first time you're watching, I got this awesome little marker made by a company called ManRam on Amazon. I'll leave a link to it. You put this piece in an outlet box, then you punch the drywall into it, it pierces through, and then you put this little piece here over the spike and you mark it out with your Sharpie, and you've got a perfect representation of the outlet box. Pretty cool. Let's try it out again. You have to fold in your electrical wiring, but that's no problem. Now I like to take scraps of the drywall to elevate my sheets a ½ inch off the ground. That way they're not as likely to ever wick moisture. All right, it's right here. All right, we pierced through, so now I can just draw out the box. Now you might be wondering why I'm installing the drywall in landscape mode, stacking one on top of the other instead of your standard portrait mode where you're putting them 8 feet high. And the reason for that is I'm already wanting to put a nice piece of trim across the 4-foot area here that I think looks really cool for Aspen's room. So this just is going to save me time of not having to mud and tape every 4 feet vertically by just putting trim straight across this break in the drywall. So I've had this rigid driver for years. It's specifically designed to belt feed drywall screws. The only problem is I've noticed it's very inconsistent. Sometimes it doesn't drive the screws all the way in, and very often it falls off the Phillips driver bit head and goes off to one side or the other. So I was pretty frustrated with it. But thankfully, a friend of mine in town, Mike, who just got through building his own basement, said he pretty much never wanted to see this tool again because he had done so much drywall. And so he indefinitely loaned it to me, and it is fantastic. It has a very ergonomic little band here for your hand to go around so that you can really drive those screws in and stay perpendicular to the wall. Instead of the belt that feeds, you use a pocket full or a belt pouch full of screws, and you hand feed them into the wall. And I have had so much better consistency with it just dimpling into the drywall. It rarely ever gets off one direction or the other. Fantastic. So when it comes time to cut out your outlet boxes, be it on the walls or the ceiling, a couple standard versions of how you do that. One is just a typical hand saw. This is specifically made for drywall, very aggressive teeth, but works fantastic. It's got a very sharp point. You can just pierce right through the drywall. But for as many as we're cutting here, I love having a rotary tool like this one that happens to be made by Ryobi. The secret is in the bit up top here. So it looks like a drill bit, but it's made specifically to cut through drywall, and some of them are made for lightweight wood and things like that. The nice thing about this one is the very tip of it is rounded off. It doesn't have an aggressive blade on the tip. You can still pierce through the drywall, but then it won't cut your box. You can just ride the perimeter of the box, and it makes it so much faster. Or before we get any comments, let's talk about the drywall. So your standard order of operations would be to put your ceiling up first, because the wall board comes up and actually supports the edges of your ceiling drywall. In our case, our walls are higher than 8 feet, so I was already going to have to go around and put the trim up for this gap you see here in this picture. So I elected to put the drywall on the walls up first because Aspen was home during that time. Now, as you can see in this picture here, she is on a school trip to Ireland for her agricultural studies class, and she is getting to visit castles and then all kinds of farms in Ireland to milk cows and do all kinds of other awesome things studying farm work there. It was a great opportunity for her, and she wanted to help with this portion of the video. It would be a lot more difficult for her to put up any of the ceiling drywall, though she did help me with one piece. So instead, we elected to start putting up the wall board first. As you can see in this set of shots my wife took, we put up this very technical piece here. We marked and cut out the floating shelf studs. Then we drilled holes for the wiring to come through. We placed everything, and she got to drive all these screws in. So now I'm just going to go around and fill in the gaps like you might be able to see up top here. So this is Resilient Channel. You may have seen it if you've watched some of my other basement videos because I've installed it before. It is used for sound deadening. So the thinking is, instead of just screwing in your drywall straight to these trusses, and thus every step above is transferring that energy, that sound vibration, straight through the truss and down into your drywall, you create a standoff by screwing this metal across your trusses like this, but only one screw goes into each truss, and then you screw the drywall into this metal. Here's a little close-up video of what it looks like. And that way, this little bit that you screw the drywall into is not transferring all that energy. You've got some sound vibration or some vibration dampening by using this. It goes in really easy. I use these kind of self-tapping metal screws, and it also cuts very easily with standard tin snips. So I use full lengths for this side, as you can see here, and then when we get over to here, I need to cut them down a little bit, and that's pretty easy to do. So let's install some. I'm just gonna set it right on the little Phillips head of my drill. Set it in place. I like to overlap it a couple inches at least from the other piece, and that way I know I'm staying straight. And then in it goes. Now there's all kinds of little pre-drilled holes in the channel. When those line up, it's really easy, but otherwise if they don't line up, then these little self-tapping screws I use will just punch through the metal and right into the joists. Now when we get to the overlap, I just screw through the bottom one, just like that. Next, let's put up a piece of ceiling drywall. It's the same as I'm using on the walls. So I measured this gap here and cut this piece down to size. And I also brought in the arms for this smaller piece. Let's do the same over here. All right, now we want the face of the drywall to face the lift, meaning the back paper side is going towards us. So I set them right down here on these little holders. Check to make sure I'm centered and I'm off a touch here, so just scoot that right over. Now we'll just kind of rotate it into place. The head up here swivels so you can get into some pretty tight places. So I like to leave it like this, which is the most secure, until I get up most of the way. Like that. Then I can flip it down, move these guys out of the way while I can still reach them. And I reviewed this drywall lift on the channel. There'll be a link over in the corner right up top now. The only thing I didn't like about it really was that this cable starts to bind on itself, and when you get almost all the way to the top, it pops off of its own wind and drops like a quarter to a half inch. Watch this, it's very unsettling. Back off a little. There it goes. Once you get used to it, it's not a big deal, but at first I thought the sky was falling. All right, quick camera adjustment so you can see how we're lining everything up here. Now I really like the DeWalt drywall driver I've been using for all the walls. Only problem is with Resilient Channel, I found it wasn't driving the screws in enough. It was just missing a lot. So instead, I'm gonna use just a standard drill so that I can get a little deeper into the drywall than that DeWalt was able to do. All right, now that I've got the perimeter basically screwed in, I'm safe to just scoot my drywall lift over, since that center piece of Resilient Channel is right along this bar. But if I just pull it over here just so I get a little bit of extra support, then I can finish up. Now here's a quick tip. Once you put up a sheet of drywall, you'll have no idea where that Resilient Channel is. So I like to make markings ahead of time. You can see I put a straight line right in dead center of the Resilient Channel. And then I also like to put a little secondary mark that tells me where the corner is right here instead of the edge. The edge is really flimsy and the screw can miss and come off of it. So if I'm gonna err to one side of dead center, I wanna err towards this more rigid side. So right above the top shelf is going to be the light shining down on it. And as you can see, the Resilient Channel is gonna make it tough to get the cable connected after install. So I went ahead, pre-installed the light on the piece of drywall so I can take the lift, bring it up close, pre-connect it, and then set it into place. It'll be pretty easy just to pull this out, tape it off, and paint later. Now, as you can see through the archway, I still need to finish that last little gap above 8 feet in the drywall, and I need to finish drywalling the closet, but I wanted to get this video out for the weekend. Now, in our next video, we are going to start mudding and taping the drywall. Right now, it just looks like a bunch of seams and screw holes. So we're going to use joint compound to cover all that up and start making it look like one wall. We are also going to put in rounded bullnose. So I'm going to buy the stuff that can go around a rounded archway, as well as the straight stuff for this bottom area and the closet, so that Aspen's room has nice rounded corners. So if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, will you please give it a thumbs up? It's really helpful to the channel. Also, please consider subscribing. We've got this ongoing series going where we're finishing the basement. I also do a lot of tool reviews that I think you'd find interesting, and it's very helpful to the channel. I'll leave links to a lot of the things I talked about in this video. Full disclosure, those will be Amazon affiliate links. So if you click on them and end up making any purchase, it won't cost you a thing. But I do get a small reward for driving customers to Amazon, and that's also helpful to me. So until next time, thank you for watching. Hi. Do you want to be in the shot? Yeah. But I'm filming right now. Hey, this is all going on right now. It's going down for real. You can't help at this point. Get down, how dare you.